Welcome and good afternoon. I am so glad you guys are able to join us today. This is the afternoon group for Oakland Creates. Um, Thank you everyone for joining us on YouTube and also um, on Zoom. I'm going to go over just a little bit of housekeeping, so I will share my screen. Um, let's see. Can everyone see? Let's see. Awesome. So what is Oakland Creates? Oakland Creates started in 2015 as a way to provide opportunities to Black and Brown artists to showcase their work in a safe space that not only prioritized African, Indigenous, and Latino culture, but that celebrates diversity and sought a fair exchange for creativity and artistic experimentation. Oakland Creates developed into a mini Zinefest Comics Fest, showcasing zines, art, and comics from new and emerging artists in the East Bay, Oakland area. Primarily giving space to traditionally underrepresented voices, Oakland Creates also gives space to creators who work to build a conscious, uplifting, and holistic community. Like I said, I'm just going to go over a couple things. I'm sure everyone is familiar with the safe space policy, but I'll briefly go over that. Oakland Creates is committed to providing a safe space and inclusive environment for everyone, regardless of gender, gender identity, expression, sexual orientation, disability, physical appearance, body size, race, or religion. We will not tolerate harassment at Oakland Creates events in any form. Anyone violating the safer space policy may be sanctioned or expelled from the space or the event at the discretion of any Oakland Creates Art, Comics, and Fest organizers or volunteers. So I will quickly go over the lineup today, which is myself, and then Luis, and then Jose, James, Hixson, Anna Zusman, Shani Ely, and then Leneja House. My name is Avi. I write and draw and self-publish a comic book. It's a series, a horror series called Nothing Good Ever Happens at 4 a.m. It's set in dystopian Oakland, California, and it primarily features BIPOC characters, and they fight way through hordes of zombies. I started this comic back in 2012, and been doing maybe one issue a year. I've kind of taken a break from that to work on zines as well. I'm a horror and sci-fi fan. I enjoy anything blood, guts, even B movies. I live and work in Oakland, and I organize or help to organize San Francisco Zine Fest, and I'm the curator organizer for Oakland Creates. And when I'm not drawing aliens or monsters or just regular people, I do like to do culture, Black history zine as well. I'm going to stop sharing this particular slideshow and share a little bit of my work. So again, my name is Avi, and I have this series, Nothing Good Ever Happens at 4 a.m. I started it as a sort of an ode to Oakland and showcasing all the landscape or the landmarks of Oakland. So you'll see a lot of buildings or places in Oakland in the comic. I'm on issue number 7 right now. So I have issue 1 through 6 available on my Etsy shop. I introduced you to 4 main characters, and they all are telling the story of invasion by zombies from their own point of view. So the first one is Dre, and then Chan. They're all in different locations during the breakout, and then DJ, and then Zuki are 2 other main characters. And of course, they always have to run into zombie kids. I really have a good time drawing. I like ink work on paper mostly. I also wanted to make it a story about redemption and friendship and sort of people struggling to survive the apocalypse, but also tell a coming of age story as well. Again, you'll see all different landmarks of Oakland in this story. Issue 1 and 2 are exclusively black and white ink. Issue 3, I started to include watercolor work. And again, I like to do a lot of portraiture and storytelling around the human story. So I included other places in Oakland. They go to Chinatown in issue 4. And so it became multicultural, like people have to survive together. Um, and there's always room for zombies, more zombies. Um, and then the zine making, I started making a zine about microaggressions and racial discrimination called What Did You Just Say to Me? And just all my personal experiences with different things being shouted at me or told to my face or backhanded compliments that I've run into. Um, and then I also did a zine about triggers and how to navigate your workspace, school, as well as a zine where I did a daily drawing every day for Black History Month. So more personable work about my mental health, how to overcome issues of mental health, and just being in the U.S. Um, at the time, there were quite a few killings or slayings of Black people at the hands of police. So I wanted to address that and sort of racism also in our different walks of life. And then again, like I said, I did a drawing of an icon, a Black history icon every day in my next zine. And so you can purchase all these on my Etsy. I'm coming up, I have 2 zines that I'm working on, one for 2020, one for 2021, with more Black history icons. So that's what's coming up next. But I love doing just portraiture in black and white. Then I also have zines about my health, my personal health, and not only mental health, but physical health. I have a lot of allergies, so I have a zine about that. And just how, just to deal with different physical ailments. And so my next one was dealing with sleep apnea. So that's a zine that I'm working on. I was joking when I said I have maybe 4 or 5 zines in the works. They're all almost finished. So hopefully by the end of the year, early next year, you'll be able to get a new zine about my allergies and a zine about sleep apnea as well. And again, you can find me at Nothing But It 4 on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. As an organizer, you can find me at Oakland Creates. And to buy Oakland Creates merch or my zines and comics, go to storm1.etsy.com. So that's it for me. I'm going to go ahead and go to our next presenter. So next up is Luis Blackaller. He is AKA Cartoon Distortion. He's an artist from Mexico City with an interest in public space, issues of representation and diversity in popular culture, the life cycles of narrative colonism, and good old-fashioned cinema. Luis lives in Los Angeles, where he self-publishes personal work with a simple mission in mind to express his vision of Latin American imagination and life in Mexico City. So take it away, Luis.
Thank you, Avi. Hi, everybody. Do I sound good?
Sound great. You're perfect.
Thank you. So you introduced me and greatly, so thank you for that. And you know, first thing I'm gonna say is I'm very honored to be here, given this opportunity to share the stuff I'm doing with everybody watching, and then also experiencing what everyone else is doing, which is very inspiring, and I just love it. I've been visiting the Zinefest in LA since I moved to LA. That was about 10 years ago. And then about summer 2019, I kind of finally collected the required impetus to make my own scenes. And I started making some things. The third quarter of 2019, I applied to LA Zinefest and I got accepted. I was very excited. And then the pandemic hit and, you know, everything kind of like fizzled down. LA Zinefest didn't happen, but throughout that and that year in 2020, but through that, I kind of like started seeing that there were all these different other Zinefests in other cities that were popping out in a visual format. The first one I participated in was the San Francisco Zinefest, which kind of had to do with probably why I'm here right now. And it just you know, in person, it's so great to go to the Zinefests. I used to love it, even though I was mostly a spectator. And I was really looking forward to have my table there. I haven't been able to have a table on a real Zinefest and since I started making scenes, because that hasn't happened. But these virtual alternatives that came about, I think they are great in its own way, and I just love the idea that they could be a kind of like complementary part once we move forward out of the pandemic lifestyle. I hope, soon, because we get to do these kind of things where um, we're all in different cities, or some of us are. We're learning about communities that we wouldn't have experienced otherwise, right? Like, I'm so, humbled by this vibrant Oakland community that I wouldn't have known about otherwise. So I'm just grateful for that. I just wanted to start by saying that. And then I'm gonna show you some things. I'm gonna start by go with share screen. And this is just like an intro thing. That's a website I have called Cartoon Distortion, which is a space I kind of created to promote my own work, or work that I do in collaboration with other people. And it has the classic link to a online store that I have, where I have some stuff for sale, and then I use Instagram for contact and stuff like that. So far, I haven't found a better alternative. And then here is a bunch of little pages that describe projects that I've done in the past or closer to the present. So like these ones on top are mostly related to scenes or filmmaking, which is what I have been focused on lately. So if you go to cartoondistortion.com, there will be links to everything I do or have for sale or whatever else. So that's it with that. Simple. And then I have a bunch of things around here, a couple of things that I've been working on that haven't finished, but they're almost done and will be out very soon. I am kind of very fond of vinyl records, and I've always wanted to make this picture book vinyl records that are kind of like a memory from childhood, but also there's some bands and musicians that have done it recently, and they have adopted the format to do things that are somewhat more interesting, I guess. And I'm fortunate enough to have some friends that have bands and do their own records and all that. And I've been working with this psychedelic rock band from the Czech Republic called Resting Haste, on making the covers for their records and all that. For example, I made this one. This came out like a year ago. So it's a good opportunity to play with, graphics and meaning and their connection to the songs and manufacturing. It's like cool stuff. You can just, it's nice to kind of just try to package it all into something that adds meaning to the thing. But while doing that, this is like about 8 years ago or so, I wrote a song for them so that I could make a picture book so that I can put it on a record. And finally, I'm almost finished. Here's the book. It's called Spontaneously Drowned by Fire. And it's inspired a little bit by the work of Louis Bourgeois and Charles Burns. And it's about the man who confuses his house for his lover. And it's a very surreal, everybody is naked. And it's a very surreal, kind of like dreamlike journey throughout this guy that just doesn't know what's going on and never does. And it's over here. So this is something that I'm just waiting for the record, which is being pressed in the Czech Republic as we speak, I hope, and then I will have it ready very soon. But I printed the books on Riso and they turned out really great. So that's the thing that I'm looking forward to having out in the store very soon. And then another thing that I have been working on recently, I mentioned it on brief conversation we had offline when we were being introduced to each other as the afternoon group. When I was during the pandemic, when I was sharing the space with my kid here at home, and I was working here and she was taking her classes over there, her art class one day just out of the blue was like, hey, let's make some scenes. And then the kids were making scenes, and I just jumped in and joined the class, I guess. And you know, my kid, whose name is Maya, started making this one, which has like some pretty nicely outlined characters and personalities. It's a very comic strip inspired, feels like, I don't know, Peanuts or Garfield or something like that. But there's this girl called Annie Einstein, which is a genius but doesn't want to be. She just wants to be shallow. And then she has a friend called Queen Kitty, which is a very what's the word for that? I forget the word. It's a cat with a lot of attitudes, basically. And then there's this flower called Lazy Daisy, and the three of them have all these adventures. So we kind of took it to town, and we've made a bunch of them. And right now, where's that? Here, yeah. Then we kind of like try to enhance the artwork a little bit by, you know, retracing it in nice paper and using those wonderful alcohol-based markers that everybody loves. And we're in the process of getting them printed. So I'm looking forward to that. And I hope it becomes something that we keep doing, because I find it very rewarding to be able to, you know, kind of take the backseat collaborating with an 11-year-old that happens to be my kid. It's like, I feel so good about that. So those are the two things that are kind of like in the works. Another thing that, and please, if I run out of time, just let me know, because 5 minutes, like crazy. So the other thing, 5 minutes is that thing where like you feel like it's a lot of time, but it isn't, and you always end up with no time and you didn't know what you said. That's what happens to me. Another thing that I did recently that it's also a, you know, Bay Area based event is I was accepted to participate on a thing called the East Bay Print Sale that is run by Tiny Splendor and Max Print Garage. I don't know if I said that right, but I put in this series of prints that I've been working on lately that are called Pitufina. Those are in the website, and Pitufina is basically Spanish for Smurfette, which is the female character from the Smurfs. The Smurfs, I really like the you know, the original comic strip and everything else that came afterward, because it's kind of like really obvious how problematic they are in terms of representation of like gender and, you know, race and all those things, like class and just although it's just crazy and it's just for kids and really funny, but you read into it and it's kind of insane how problematic it is. So I kind of took that to just use that in combination with my love for like pulp fantasy heroines to kind of make a run of female archetype stereotype prints in which you have a heroine and she's always blue, and that's all that is about. And I'm just taking it through like all the different genres that I've loved through my life. And you know, here's some that this is where like I keep the originals with the prints. You know, that one's just a flying one. This is kind of like a Comanche princess, if you will, with a white tiger. This is a Catrina from Dia de Muertos. This is just a, it's like a, I call it intellectual. She's a heroine of the mind. She just has a lot of books and likes to wear underwear. This one is kind of like a tropical fantasy weird thing. It's very surreal. And there's more that I haven't printed. There's a ton of that stuff. So that's also a recent thing I've done. How we're doing on time, more or less?
I was gonna say you have a couple of seconds left. Are these things that we can buy online at your store or at your website?
Yes, the prints are at the store, and they are bundled. If you get many, you get like good discounts, and it's very nice. The scenes and the books are also at the store when they come out, but the ones I showed you haven't come out yet because they are both still in production. And
Okay.
you know, if I had time, I would have talked about the stuff that I have there, but it's okay because I wanted to talk about these things that are coming out first.
We'll ask you a little bit later about where they can purchase it, so you have time a little later. But
Okay.
I do appreciate your art. It's graphically beautiful. It's really bold and dynamic work. So thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
sharing with us.
Thank you.
All right, so
Happy to
I'm
be
gonna
here.
share my. You're welcome. I'm gonna share my screen again and go to our next presenter. So up next is James Hixson. James started drawing as a part of their healing journey about 5 years ago. In the art and zines, they combine drawing, poetry, watercolor, and acrylic painting, photography, and personal archives to talk about their life and experience as a trans and genderqueer person. Welcome, James. And James also volunteers and monitors our chat. So you're talking directly to James. Thank you so much for helping out in many capacities. Appreciate you so much. Yeah, next up, James.
Cool. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the introduction. Let's see. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. Yeah, so like Evie said, I started drawing about 5 years ago. I do drawing and painting and watercolor stuff now, just kind of on my own, just like whatever I want to do, I guess. So I don't have as much to show as everybody else, but I'm going to show what I do have. So these were my two. Oh, I was going to share my screen. Here, let me share my screen. Okay, are you seeing it? Oh, seeing that? Okay. So let's see. These were my two zines from last year that I had. They're both really short, little kind of collections. The first one, it was the first part of my memoir that I started working on. This is like ink and nib drawings, and it's sort of in the comic style, I guess, like this. It's only like 6 pages, but it took me like 2 years to make it. So that was that one. I also have this one that is, there you go. It's some collected drawings of my dog Tiny, who passed away a couple years ago now. But these are like my favorite drawings of him. And then this year, I have a new zine that I finished. Is called 1996, or it's Memoir Part 2. It's the second part of my memoir project. This one is like a collaboration with my 16-year-old self and my current self. So it's kind of part of this larger project that I've been working on for, well, I guess like my whole life kind of, but started really like 95, 96 with these poems. And it's taken a lot of different forms over the years. I'm like a database person for my real job. So for a while, this was just, I was trying to build this really extensive like database archive of essentially all my memories. So it's like an archive and a collection project. But yeah, these are the poems that I wrote when I was like 15, 16 years old. It was 95, 96. It was it was the time in my life that was like the first time that I transitioned, I guess. And it was, I guess the way to say it, it's just the poems processing my feelings and experiences from that time. Is a lot of pain and like just my struggles with mental health and stuff around transitioning and like isolation, being a trans person in kind of like semi-rural Ohio at the time. So I guess earlier this year, I've always had these poems. Earlier this year, I realized it was the 25-year anniversary of that time. And I started collecting the poems and putting them together, kind of part of my healing process. And I knew that I wanted to publish them for my younger self to like honor the voice of that person who didn't get to speak at that time. And but I also knew like the poems didn't really stand on their own, or that they needed context or container around them. So the work itself is kind of it's a time travel project. It's the poems interspersed or interwoven with drawings from the past couple of years since I started drawing, like processing like archives and memories and stuff from that time. So so it puts my current self and my past self in conversation with each other, and it acts, or at least it was intended for myself to be like a healing process, kind of protection for that self. What else did I want to say? I guess, yeah, I mean, the intention of it, when I think about memoir, like what I intend to do with memoir, it's a healing thing for myself, but it's also something that I want to offer up to like people in my community. So I hope that it like lands in that way for other people as well. So that's like, those are my zines. I do like other art and drawings. I haven't had as much time this year as I would have liked in the would have liked to spend on my art, but I do watercolors and paintings and drawings in my life. These are a couple watercolors that I did from two of the events that I went to this year. One was a Block the Boat with the Arab Resource and Organizing Center earlier this year. And then the one on the right is a watercolor from the Healing Clinic Collective's Healing Clinic for Trans and Genderqueer people. That was in the fall. And let's see, mostly I just, yeah, this is just like a little, some of my drawings. Mostly what I do now is just what I have time for is just kind of line work and just sort of scribbling in the moment. And that's how I'm kind of just like documenting my stuff. So yeah, I'm just hoping to do more art and like more, I think I want to put some of my daily drawings or regular drawings into some zines. And yeah, I just want to build more of a practice into the future. So thanks for having me. And yeah, that's all for me.
Thank you so much. I love your work, and just I'm really inspired by your courage to share your personal story too. That's something I'm new to. So yeah, anyone who has the courage to do that, I applaud them. Yeah, keep doing what you're doing. You know, I love you to death. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm gonna move to the next person. I'm going to share my screen once again, and up next is Anna Zusman. Anna Zessman was born in the former Soviet Union, and she lived in New York City, Providence, and San Francisco prior to settling in southern Arkansas for 4 years. Actually, I'm sorry, 4 years ago. Having lived in a variety of places allowed her to form a unique perspective on the world. Her drawings and zines often employ visual metaphors and surreal elements to comment on human condition and society. Hi, Anna, and you are next.
All right, thank you, Abby. Let me share my screen. Okay. Sorry, 1 second. Can you see this?
Yes, we can see it.
All right, excellent. So I'm Anna Zessman. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I got into making zines about 8 years ago when a friend of mine suggested that I compile together drawings of mermaids that I was creating into what became an art book, Mermaid Heritage. I've been making zines for a while after that. I really love that. The first zine festival that I went to was one organized by Evie in Oakland in 2015. So I'm very excited to be back here. However, this year, I really wasn't making zines much. I was focusing more on my drawing. So in the beginning of the pandemic, I did a collaboration with Ray Briggs, and Ray is a poet, so we would take 3 words each and send them to one another, and then Ray would write a poem, and I would create a drawing. And since this was in the beginning of the pandemic, initially we were just sort of hoping to get away from it all and get a bit distracted from what was going on. Surprisingly, that's not quite what happened, because all of our poems and drawings wound up dealing with destruction and disruption and catastrophe. So ultimately, our collaboration was published in Cordite Poetry Review. And I continued making other drawings, which are part of my current series with the working title, Everything is Fine. So here is Alice, in a mask, afraid to take cookies from, in this case, a slug, not a caterpillar. Many of my drawings in the very beginning of the pandemic dealt with loneliness and isolation. So this one is the alchemist toiling in his room, trying to figure things out and not being very successful at it. So as far as the technique, I started out working with traditional media, pen and ink primarily, but for the past 3 or 4 years, I've been mostly working digitally. So this is digital drawings. This next drawing is about the fair, kids, attending an empty fair, again, in masks, things blowing in the wind. Kind of, again, inspired by what was going on. And then I feel that my focus has shifted. So after initial drawings that dealt with catastrophe and loneliness, it became about finding some way to escape. So this one, Floating Away, was a breakthrough drawing for me, because this is about a woman leaving her past life and all the things in it, and all the history, and going somewhere else to some new direction. And then eventually I realized that all my drawings have to do with this major disruption, major crisis, and yet characters generally sort of act as if, life goes on. And that's when I decided on the title, Everything is Fine. So here is this crawfish-headed person whose head is actually mounted on the wall, but he's just having his afternoon tea and going on with it. And this one is about a snake person. By the way, so the crawfish and the snakes are things that I typically see on my walk. So a lot of my drawings, well, they're very surreal. A lot of times, much of the imagery comes from things that I see day to day, like the initial inspiration. So yeah, this one is about the snake person with the earthquake, things falling apart, but he's just laying there looking good. This one is the most recent drawing I created, and here is this bird woman looking outside, looking at freedom. So I tried to use line work that was kind of more organic and open-ended on the right, and was more geometric on the left side to kind of go with the topic. I'm hoping to possibly collect all of those drawings together into a large format zine later on, but I haven't done it yet. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to participate in any in-person events, and I haven't been motivated to actually make zines and compile things together. This is where you can see my work. So my website is annazessman.com. My zines you can purchase on the MagCloud website. And my Instagram is Chuda Yuda Publications. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Your work is stunning. I mean, the attention to detail is amazing. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So up next, let me share my screen. Next is Jose Ramirez Calamateo. He says, I love telling stories inspired by the eerie situations I've experienced in the Bay. I create digital and analog work from these musings. I'm a Bay Area designer, illustrator, and zinester. I grew up in the farmlands of the Monterey Peninsula and moved to San Francisco for school. So it is your turn, Jose. And thank you for joining us. I'll make sure you can share your screen if you like. And so you're all set, Jose.
Thanks. Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
So yeah, I grew up in the Monterey Peninsula in the strawberry fields or lettuce fields for quite a period of time. I worked with my mom. This is actually my mom working. I worked alongside her for years before I moved to San Francisco to go to school. And it's a strange tradition. My mom tells stories in an oral tradition. I don't find myself very capable of telling stories in an oral tradition. I tell stories in the form of print. And so when I came to San Francisco, I started telling little stories and building these little characters around different things. And it usually revolved around my own experiences living in Monterey or experiences here in San Francisco. And so I love aliens. I like sci-fi. I like the eerie things that can't be explained. And so, I modeled this over the X-Files kind of thing. But, in this case, there's this little alien creature that really communicates with this person, telepathically, and tries to kind of explore the world itself. Why do people like drink soda, or why these things happen? And so kind of, what would an alien person coming from a different world experience in this world, and how do a human kind of explain those things? And so I'm going to show you a few pages of it. I created this whole language based on, the creature kind of speaking. And a lot of it, you read it from the perspective of the human. And so the human kind of gives subtleties to what it's saying without having to explain it. And so I did create a little grid where you could actually translate all this if you wanted to. But yeah, this little for short story was very kind of, the exploration of this octopus thing. And so, they get into trouble, they kind of, struggle through what these things are. And, it's the meaning of life, I guess you could say. And then recently I started, I changed that method of telling the story where I wanted to tell more of the story of, the actual writing, because I really love the writing itself, that I didn't want to change the writing and make it into a comic. And so I just created the illustrations, but I left the writing as it was. And this story is basically a seedling that is just kind of, in the middle of nowhere. Nobody's seen it, but it has its own world. It's all encased in this place. And it was really nice to kind of go through that process of just kind of telling that story of this, these things that we don't really consider sometimes. And so for a while, I've been doing also these little things that I call tamaeki. And these are the musings within San Francisco that I've experienced. I love taking pictures of pigeons. I go out and take pictures of pigeons or birds. And so there was a lot of pigeon work, a lot of poetry, some photography, and it's all based around, you know, the Bay Area, wherever I go, you know. And so I compiled a lot of it because some of those, it's more of my complaints about the Bay Area. And so I compiled another one where it was more related to the perspective of the pigeon seeing humans, and then also what's happening in the Bay Area in terms of homelessness and stuff like that. You know, in this case, you know, I'm telling a story with, you know, the pigeons themselves and pictures that I've taken. Not like the best pictures, but just like pictures of like these things in the world and how distorted the world is itself. And so this is what, you know, I took pictures as I traveled through, you know, certain places, and just kind of created that essence of poetry within, you know, these images. I also created this poem mostly because it's related to, you know, homeless people in the area, you know, not being seen, not being, you know, being able to like be humans like we all are, you know. And so that, you know, disparity and how we look at them as mythological things that don't exist, you know, kind of thing. So it was kind of nice. Other things that I do is posters. This is something I did in terms of like, you know, the immigration policy that was happening at the time. Just kind of, you know, all people are welcome. Tapatio is, for where I come from in Mexico, we're all called tapatios, which is related to the bottle itself. And, you know, it's just kind of, you know, cemented those two things together, at least for me, culturally. I also did a series of posters for the San Francisco Center for the book, linoleum prints. You know, I did Dolores Huerta, James Baldwin, you know, Angela Davis, and Yuri Kuchiyama. And it basically cemented these things of like, when I grew up in the fields of Salinas, not only am I Mexican, but I grew up in an African-American family. And then I had experiences with a Japanese family also. So all those cultural things that kind of came together and kind of created me basically as I grew up. And so it was nice to have this, like, you know, that series continue. And so I will still continue doing these activists and the quotes that I really kind of admire. And so that's everything I had to share with you, at least, you know, for now. There's my website, my Instagram page. Anybody want to get any of this stuff, just DM directly. I do have a shop, but it's a little iffy because I haven't really updated it in probably a month or two. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Your work is stunning. Amazing graphics. And I love that you're telling the stories of San Francisco and the Bay Area. That's one thing I enjoy too, is the different locations in the Bay Area too. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. So I'm going to continue on to our next presenter. Next up is Shani Ely. Shani is a spirit-chasing, forced, wandering Black woman who spends a lot of time dreaming up new worlds through painting, the written word, and zine making, where we heal and transform intergenerational patterns of harm, neglect, self-negation, and trauma. Shani's work is greatly informed by the desire to learn and practice rituals that center the values of African earth-centered spiritual traditions. Shani's work seeks to unearth what has been buried and pushed aside as a result of assimilation, and honor, celebrate, and affirm the ancestral practices that help folks of the African diaspora to remain grounded and connected to our sacred path. Keep up with Shani on Instagram at AnyQueens. And thank you so much for running our workshop on honoring our ancestors and all the other wonderful things you do. I appreciate you. Thanks for being with us, Shani. You're up next.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. There it is. slideshow. And yeah, okay. So yeah, give thanks. Thank you, Avi, so much, and to the Oakland Creates community. I really love coming on here to kind of share work, and I appreciate the ways that y'all support indie artists and local artists, so it feels good to be here. Okay, so sometimes I get long-winded, so I'm gonna try to keep it short. So my work, or first myself, I'm Shawnee, pronouns she, hers, and they, them. I'm from Stockton, but have been living in the Bay since '07, and then Oakland specifically since 2013. And most of my work is sort of centered or informed by two things. So the first is sort of my experiences through racial and social justice nonprofits, and then the other is around how can I heal and decolonize myself from like family stuff and like respectability politics, and how can I ground myself in Afro-Indigenous spiritual practices, specifically Ifa Orisha. So this first slide is sort of like my first scene. And so I've always considered myself to be a writer, but didn't really start getting into drawing and painting until leaving a really, really toxic job. And this was in 2015. This is at the height of Black Lives Matter. Oakland was turned up, and it was just too much. I said, I don't know what's happening with everybody, but there's some conflicts in what we say in our marketing, but then how we treat employees. And so a lot of my zines sort of, especially this What the Spirit Says volume, I think there was like maybe 1 through 4, but it really sort of documents sort of the harm that I was seeing happening to myself, but then also to other BIPOC and QTPLC folks that I worked with. And then basically the journey to, you know, leaving consistent income in hopes of finding something that was more spiritually or mentally in alignment. Okay, and so then the next one, Name Yourself. This was created 2020. So during the pandemic, very incredibly hard time for a lot of us. Found myself again in a work situation that was not the best, firing folks without process, firing folks for losing loved ones when we're all kind of experiencing loss. And so that was hard. And I needed some visual written affirmations that didn't confine me into that moment. And so here was where this scene came from. And this image to the, I don't know, the left was sort of inspired by, I guess I also did Inktober. So I was taking the creations out of Inktober and sort of feeding them into this affirmation poem series. And then another thing to say about this was that it was also inspired by Lovecraft Country. The Hippolyta episode, it was really beautiful to see the ways in which she was able to like acknowledge and explore her multiplicities of desire, of identity. And I definitely wanted some of that magic with myself. Okay, and so then the other part, so it's like one part's nonprofit stuff, trying to figure out how to move through that. Then the other part is grounding myself in Ifa Orisha. And so I did an image or a take on jambalaya, and I put jambalaya here because for those who wanting to know more about like sort of sacred work, sort of ancestor reverence, this is a good place to start. One of the reasons why I am really drawn and attracted to Ifa is because it's usually encouraging us to focus on 3 things. So one is, how do we strengthen our relationships with the Mother Earth? How do we strengthen our relationships with our lineage, with our ancestors? But then also, how do we build a stronger connection to our Ori, which is our sacred head, and sort of the keeper of our intuitive knowledge and our purpose. Okay. Before I move on, these are some of the, I guess, drawings coming out of the Adupwe Egun series, which is We Give Thanks to the Ancestors. And so I wanted to, I don't know, eventually this may be a zine, I'm not sure, but basically trying to pull inspirations and lessons from visual artists, writers who I feel inspired by. So the left side is Minnie Evans, a Black Southern writer who was deeply informed by her dreams and sort of her internal knowledges that were coming to the surface. The middle started as the sort of grief and ancestor tribute session that we had last week. And so this is in honor of my Aunt Bunny. I still need to finish. And then, of course, the right is Octavia Butler, mother of Oya, changes, adaptability, all that good stuff. Okay, and so then I couldn't leave here without just talking about my stress. So as much as I am about like spiritual practices and honoring the ancestors, I was not ready for this. And so I'm still processing Belle's loss. And I thought it was interesting because as I was trying to get myself together for today, I'm finding notes from the What the Spirit Says zine series in Bell Hooks, All About Love. I said, I can't handle the ways in which her work has been with me for a very, very, very long time. Bell Hooks is the person I go to at the crossroads of any sort of major point in my life. And so, you know, I'll have to figure out how to grieve or create space for grieving. But we have, this is just, it's a profound loss for us. But then also, as I've been encouraged by friends that, you know, Belle is now in the spiritual realm. And so now we have a powerful ally in that space to help us continue to do the work of decolonizing ourselves and, you know, tapping in. Okay, that's all I'm saying. This is where you can find me at Ani Queen's Instagram or shawneeartely.com. That's it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm always inspired and uplifted by your work. You're so positive and give us a great space to just think about our inner workings and ourselves. So I applaud you for that because that's much needed in our COVID pandemic era, but also just for growth as human beings. And so I thank you. I'm so grateful that you could join us. So next up, we have Leneja House, which is Brina Nunez and Lawrence Lindell. Dreamt up in 2019, but founded in 2020. Leneja House is a family-run small press that publishes work from Lawrence Lindell, Brina Nunez, and Bailey's magazine comics anthology. Leneja House is built on the foundation of family, love of comics, zines, and coffee. Projects include comics, graphic novels, art books, zines, and cartoons. It's pronounced Leneja. And thank you for joining us earlier as well for our interview and inviting some amazing friends to speak as well. And you guys are up next, Leneja House. Thank you.
All right, can folks hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
And can you see the slideshow?
Yep, and thank you for making that wonderful logo, which is now on sweatshirt, t-shirts. Awesome work, awesome collaborative work.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brina Nunez, and let's see, I'm a cartoonist, educator, and wife of Lawrence Lindell.
I'm Lawrence. I'm married to Brina, also cartoonist, educator. Yeah, and we're Leneja House, a small press based in the Bay Area. And we did this year's logo for Oakland Creates, which is exciting. When Avi texted Brina, I was like, for real? And yeah, so that's what happened. We did it together. I drew a little Bart character, and then Brina drew the character on top of that and did the lettering as well, because they're really good at lettering, better than I am. So
I'm all right.
Yeah, that's us in cartoon form, and our mascot, which is just simply called House. Yeah. And so we have comics in print and digital. And right now we do a series, a $5 comic series called Leneja House, and we have 4 out. So issue 1, 2, we switch off drawing the covers. So I did the cover for the one that's kind of in this like purplish magenta, and Brina did the one that's in black and white. And in each comic, you'll find 4 different comics, 2 from Brina and 2 from myself. In the first one, it's a comic called Work, which is dedicated to the 5 elements of Vogue film. And then a comic Brina did called Dear Sentido.
Yeah, I did this in the MFA in Comics program at CCA. And it was from an assignment where we had to create like a romantic comic or something about love. And this is loosely based off of the first time Lawrence and I met each other. And these are 2 characters that are pretty much based off of me and Lawrence. I'm like supposed to be the crocodile character, the sunflower, like the very 90s sunflower hat. And right now, like they're just super stressed out with just trying to talk to this armadillo guy in Walden Pond bookstore in Oakland.
And then the other 2 comics are Conversations with Ancestors, which I think I put out originally in 2018, but it was very small zine. And so all of our, these comics are magazine size. So it's really nice to see the work kind of blown up. And then Brina did SF Coffee and Bars.
Yeah, it's like a mini zine, just a collection of illustrations that I've made about my favorite bars and cafes that I love to go hang out at in San Francisco.
Yeah, and I always loved the one of Basilio, so that's why I put it in the slideshow.
Yeah, it's my favorite too.
Looks like it too. This is from issue 2. It features 4 more comics. There's like slice of life stuff from 2 queer roommates living in the Bay. Brina's comic Crocodile Girl, a comic I did called The Smack Avenger, which is really silly and yeah. And then You Make Them Better, I think.
Yeah, just like a silly mini comic strip / would you say autobiography or memoir?
Both.
I don't know. It's about us and how much Lawrence loves the way I make scrambled eggs.
And then in issue 3 and 4, issue 3 is different than the other ones. It features a lot of single page comics and illustration work from both of us. And then number 4 is 4 of our comics from the New Yorker daily shops, which is pretty cool. I did the cover, this one, and then Brina did the one for the New Yorker, which I think is one of my favorite ones that we have out so far. And it's the newest one that came out this month, this December. And so these are some comics from issue 3, talking about imposter syndrome and then melanin, like superhero melanin stuff. I don't know. And then more illustration stuff. So Brina did the one of their bedroom, the Lincoln Park.
Oh my God.
And then the one to the right is West Oakland, which I took a picture of when I was visiting in either 2014 or 15 from Southern California, which is where I'm from. And now I drew that image in a comic that never came out. So it was kind of cool to put this in a book. And that's from the New Yorker Daily Shouts.
Both of these are.
Yeah. And we do other comics. We did a collaboration experimental comic called One. Brina has a book called
Speak Africanismos. Looking over at me.
And then a sequel to a zine I put out called Couldn't Afford Therapy. So this is Couldn't Afford Therapy, like again. Yeah, and these are some images from One, which Brina and I drew simultaneously on the same piece of paper. And so if you read the book, it reads from top to bottom, and there's 2 different comics on each page. Yeah, trying to experiment with the form a little bit. Yeah.
No, I think you pretty much covered it. I guess a little bit about the process. We did this while we were touring, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like what was it, 2018 or
2017?
2017. Yeah, your memory's a lot better than mine. Yeah, touring like to different Zinefests and indie comic conventions. Lawrence would illustrate just like one column, or yeah, just like one side of the page, and I would pretty much also freestyle and sort of respond to what's happening. But I eventually just created like my own narrative that was kind of independent from Lawrence's story, but I don't know, they sort of go together at the same time.
I think it depends on the reader, which is the exciting part about the comic, is the reader can interpret however they want to. And this is from Brina's comic and mine. I don't know why I put them on the same page, but I was trying to do the same. Well, talk about it.
Oh, about the Speak Africanismos? Yeah, so that was sort of like an Inktober influenced project that was started by comrade Carlos Lara from El Salvador, who's a member of this organization called Afros, and they're like a Afro-Salvadoran advocacy organization in the motherland, and just basically fighting for a lot of representation for Black people in the country, since there's very little protection legally for Afro-Salvadorans. And I was really excited about this idea because this was sort of like a call to, just a call out to other Afro-Salvadorans across the diaspora in like different countries, like across the US and other parts of the world, to create illustrations for all of these different words in Spanish, but that are rooted in West African languages, such as Afro. And the rest of the book has just all sorts of different words that I didn't know that I was speaking, but later I come to find that these are all rooted in, again, like Afro-Indigenous languages that were brought over from the original ancestors.
And then to the right is an image from the Couldn't Afford Therapy comic I did. And it's as the pandemic was happening, just March came and everything kind of just trickled down. And yeah, so it's a lot about that. It's like having mental health during the pandemic, like at the start of the pandemic, and how to navigate these few years of all this work that went into getting better or managing my mental health, and then having it be like, all right, well, you got to start all over again. And it's like, damn it. So comics kind of help with that. And yeah, it's from the same two comics. Then we do the Bailey's magazine comic anthology, which is in print and digital. And then I did a follow-up to a book I put out in 2017 called From Black Boy with Love. I redid it and called it To Black Girl with Love. And I talk about in the book why I redid it, but I won't get into it now. But it's a free comic. Like I didn't want to make any money from it because the first one did all right, and this one was just kind of like passion project. So we did that one under Leneja House. And some of the images from that. And Brina's comic from the Baileys, and the cover's done by Jaime Crespo, which is fantastic because we love Jaime. So yeah. You want to talk about the Bushman?
Oh, sure, the Bushman. So I don't know if people are familiar with the Bushman, but if you've been to Pier 39, you know who he is. I did a little bit of research to discover that it's actually two people that have been playing the role as Bushman. So I just wanted to dedicate this little piece of like local history in a comic strip, and just to also kind of like make fun of my younger self for being so just like a container of anxiety and fear. Like I pretty much saw Bushman as like the boogeyman because I was like very tiny kid, and like Bushman is pretty much like at my eye level, and I feel like he's gonna like jump out and scare me. And I never wanted to be the center of attention because I just always remember crowds of people like viewing the Bushman, and that would usually be my clue to know like where he is. Like, okay, this guy is close by. I don't know why my parents are like not concerned about finding this guy because I don't want to be clowned on by a bunch of random people and by the Bushman. But I really had a lot of fun with this because I feel like the Bushman like character and just like performance really like it's just one example of what makes home feel like home to me.
And then we both have separate comics out right now. One is Funny Phases from Brina, and then Brain Stuff from me, and their collection of comics work from over, I think from 2017 till now, which the purpose was that's when we officially got together. Like we met in 2015, but we made it official in 2017. So it's kind of like a journey within a journey, I guess you could say, of like touring while starting a new relationship while also doing comics, and then what that kind of looks like. And here's some of the pages from Brina's. And yeah, curating it was fun because I love Brina's work. Yeah, I don't want to get all gushy and mushy, but yeah, I love looking at these pages and like as a fan first, not like as their partner, but as a fan of like, wow, you make amazing comics.
Oh, thank you. Oh yeah, and some of these are from the time I was like a teaching artist. The illustration on the left with Audre Lorde is just trying to teach the kiddies about who she is. And I also did a mini zine. I kind of miss doing the Somos Los Simpsons mini zine where I just draw a picture or a portrait of one of my favorite celebrities. Usually they're a BIPOC person and I draw them in Matt Groening style, and that's Solange on the right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then there's some from mine, which is kind of about mental health. This one was actually about when my dad was diagnosed with cancer, and then just the feelings of what that was. And then this one is a variation of, I was doing like a melanin related comic. Yeah, and then this was from art show, I want to say, and some music I have put out. Yeah, and a lot of like more of my black and white type of illustrations and more line work and stuff like that, because I do a lot of zines, but people don't know we have interest in a lot of things. And yeah, that was the point of those books. We also do digital comics. How are we doing on time, by the way? We don't want to take up too much time.
You're fine. I'm enjoying stuff. This is awesome.
Okay.
And get as mushy and gushy as you want. It's adorable.
I'm just kidding. But Leneja House Digital, it's more comics from us, but just in the digital format. We host them through our website, and you can read them there for free. And yeah, that's been fun to do because it is a range of topics of everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it gets really serious and heavy, like, you know, talking about race, awkwardness of racism. But then we also talk about, I don't know, just goofy things too. Like now I'm looking at that little portrait of me hanging out with that little dog with the waggly tail. Please think I'm cool. Like I always think about that whenever I run into a dog because I'm like, I want that dog to be my friend. Please don't judge me.
Yeah, so you'll find like most of the comics don't go beyond 8 panels. Some of them might, depending on what we're talking about. There's a lot of illustration stuff, which is nice to kind of be able to have a space where we could put out absolutely anything we want to. And that's why we kind of started it. And then in this December, we're starting open mic, which is kind of a similar concept, but instead of us, it's comics from cartoons that we know, like, or want to work with. And the first person is Sharon Lee De La Cruz. It's back here. She has this book out now called I'm a Wild Seed from Street Noise. I can't get it right. There we go. And yeah, we met Sharon in New York doing Comics Art Brooklyn, and yeah, just love her work and hit her up and was like, do you want to be the first cartoonist for this thing that we're trying to start? We don't know if it's going to be anything, but and she said, yeah. So her comic comes out on the 30th of this month. It's hard to keep track of time. I didn't even know today was Saturday. I was like, what is happening? But yeah, so I'm excited for that. We've been in contact with some of the other cartoonists and everyone seems pretty excited, and that should be fun, hopefully. And we do cartoons and stuff. Leneja House gets animated, which Brina does most of the voices for, which is really cool. Yeah, and it's just about our house transporting us through space, and we're searching for the best cup of coffee in the world. And just, yeah, really silly stuff. And I think it was born out of our love for like SpongeBob and Adventure Time and stuff like that. Yeah.
It's just really goofy. I love it. It's definitely like not a passion project, but it's just something fun for us to do.
Yeah.
And to fool around with.
Together.
Is that it?
I think that's the end of the
Okay,
slides.
we're done.
Yes.
Thanks for watching and listening, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us. That was amazing. And so I'm going to share my screen again, and we will wrap up with just a little bit of, if we have questions from any viewers, now would be a great time to put those in the chat. Also, let's see. Also, I have a couple of trivia questions. Anyone can answer these, not just on YouTube, but here the artist can answer as well. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I have a couple of cool giveaways. We have the Stadler watercolor pencils. I'll be giving away those. And of course, the sticker that was made by Leneja House, and it's a sketch sticker and sketchbook form. And then also there are a bunch of combo multi-liner pens, pack of 3. I'll be giving those away. And these awesome prints that were made by Yael during the screen printing demo, I'll be giving those away as well. And then some really cool alcohol-based markers from Arteza. So the first question, I'll start with something super easy. Let's see. So let's see. Name a singer or a rapper who now acts in TV and in movies. A rapper who now acts in TV or movies. And give the folks in YouTube just a couple seconds to answer that, because I know there's a bit of a delay. Name a rapper or singer that now acts on TV or in movies. Anybody can answer this. LL Cool J. Awesome. I think I have your address, so I'll send your prizes out. And so I asked this one before, and I'll ask it again because there are multiple answers. Name a comic book convention or Comic-Con that's not in San Diego. A comic book convention that is not in San Diego. Anybody can answer. Name a comic book convention or Comic-Con not in San Diego. And if nobody can guess that one, I'll move on to the next one. Name an actor. Oh, Whitney responded Ice Cube. That's another one. Cool. Name an actor who's played Superman either on TV or in the movies. There's a bunch of different people who've played Superman. So name an actor who's played Superman in the movies or on TV. Long Beach Comic Con, James. Awesome. I'm gonna have to really write these down so I remember to send you guys this stuff. Nessa said Long Beach Comic Con. So I'll ask this one also. Name a team LeBron James, a basketball team that LeBron James played on in his professional career. He's played in a couple places, at least 3. Name a team LeBron James. Lakers. Leneja House. Ding, ding, ding. Awesome. Someone doesn't like the Lakers. All right.
They beat us with the Cavs though.
Yeah, he was best in Cleveland. Let's see. Name a movie series that now has a TV spinoff. Name a movie series that now has a TV spinoff. I can name at least 3 or 4. Not saying it's on HBO Max or anything. Or on Disney. Christopher Reeves. Gosh, Whitney, you're good. And Pat Paul, make sure to message oaklandcreates@gmail.com with your address, your mailing address, so that I can send out your prizes. And then I have 2 more. So name a movie named after a holiday. Somebody shout out one in the previous morning group. Name a movie named after a holiday. There's several of those. So name a movie that's named after a holiday. And nobody could get a movie that now has a TV spinoff or a TV show spinoff. And let's see. I'll do a comic book related one. Name a indie comic book creator that now has a TV show, one or otherwise. There's an indie comic book creator that has a TV show on Hulu, and then there's one coming up too on Netflix. We have indie comic book writers and creators that have TV shows coming up. And let's see, what other one can I ask you? Name a podcast. Independence Day from Pat Paul. Okay. Name a indie podcast that now has a cable or network TV show. There are a couple indie podcasts that are now on network or cable. Indie podcast. Umbrella Academy. Awesome. So Whitney, you've won like 3 prizes. You're killing it. You're killing it. Let's see. Let's name a movie that let's see. Name a movie that an actor who's acted in Black Panther that is now acted in other movies. Just name any of their other movies. An actor from Black Panther that's in another movie or TV show. Name an actor from the movie Black Panther that has another movie or another TV show. American Horror Story. All right. Shiny. Sweet. So message me your address or just remind me that you answered correctly. Leneja too. Send me a reminder so I can send out your prizes. And that's gonna wrap up the pop culture trivia. And then I want to quickly just share my screen to share new merch from Oakland Creates. So we have some awesome t-shirts with the design by Leneja House on them. You can go to Bonfire and get the sweatshirts, t-shirts, really cool colors on there. And then the very, very limited edition, like super small set of tie-dye t-shirts with the Oakland Creates logo on there. And you can find those at storm1.etsy.com. But those turned out really cool. And so just thank you to everyone, all the volunteers, the demo leaders, workshop leaders, and my guest of honor, Leneja House. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. And really quickly, I just want to round robin everybody to give me your social media links. So I'm going to popcorn over to Jose first to give me your social media links and your stores before we wrap up.
Just say it out.
What's that? Yeah, just say it out loud. Yeah.
Oh, okay. At Interstellar Astronaut on Instagram.
Sweet. And then popcorn to somebody else, please.
I'll popcorn to Shani.
Yep. Hey, my handle is at Ani Queens, ANI_KWEENS, or you could do my website, www.shawneereely.com. And then I'll pop over to James.
Cool. Yeah, I'm on Instagram at James_V7.0. So you can send me a message there and follow me. And hopefully one day I'll have a website.
Sweet.
So pass it to Anna.
All right. So my website is annazessman.com. And I'm posting all of this stuff in chat now. So Instagram, Chuda Yuda Publications. And I'm popping the corn to Louis.
There you go. Thank you. Hi. My website is cartoondistortion.com. The Insta handle is cartoon, and then it's underscore, I think, distortion. And I have an online store at Limited Run. So that's cartoondistortion.limitedrun.com. And then I will pass you pop to Leneja House, which is there.
Now we're at lenejahouse.com for our main website. And it's just at, trying to spell it, at Leneja House for both Twitter and Instagram.
Awesomeness. Awesome. Today was amazing. Thank you, everybody, from the morning group to the afternoon group. I appreciate you guys for sharing. Hopefully, I'll see you soon. Maybe not in person, but definitely online. You guys are awesome. Give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you guys at YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're watching this. Thank you guys. And we are out of here. Thank you so much for today. Anyways.